I think I've been a pretty good person. I think if you talk to people generally in the New York City real estate market, I think it's not too many people will say negative things about me, which I always tried to treat people well and that kind of thing. And the thing I'm
Welcome to Discourse with Christian. I'm your host, Christian White. And today we have Bob Knakal. Bob is the founder and CEO of BK Real Estate Advisors. He's been in the commercial real estate industry since 1984. He's received numerous awards and accolades over the years and has consummated over $22 billion worth of real estate transactions over the years. Also has the unique award, if you will, to have completed the most really transactions of pretty much any broker nationwide and certainly in New York. And he has a commercial real estate brokerage based in New York City. And it's an honor to have you on the podcast today, Bob.
Well, Christian, great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Now, for those in the audience who are not perhaps familiar with your upbringing or story, could you share people or events that really shaped you into who you are, perhaps your values, how you look at life, so on and so forth?
Sure. Well, I grew up in a small town in northern New Jersey, and was fortunate enough to go to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. At Wharton, my freshman year, I wanted to be a Wall Street guy like every other Wharton kid at that time, and wanted to get a summer job that would look good on my resume. As fate would have it, I was dropping my resume off at a Payne Weber office, and across the hall, I saw Coldwell Banker on the wall, and I thought the place was a bank. Gave them my resume. One thing led to another. They ended up hiring me for the summer. They were the only ones hiring college kids for the summer, so took the job. Found out it was a real estate company only hours before the interview. Almost didn't go. Worked there that summer between freshman and sophomore year, and went back my next 2 summers, and then started with CB here in Manhattan when I got out of school in 1984. So it's been over 40 years. I feel truly blessed to have found a job that I love so much that is really, it's not only a vocation, but it is a hobby. And, I think commercial real estate is the greatest business in the world.
Certainly, there's obviously a lot of opportunity in the space, of course. And wanted to ask you if perhaps your parents or particular people at Wharton, certainly your peers had it, kind of pushed you in a certain direction, or they gave a quality or a trait to you that you have carried on to this day.
No, my folks had nothing to do with real estate. My dad was a high school principal. Fortunately, not the principal of the high school I went to, so that was a nice thing. And my mom was a housewife. We grew up Maywood in New Jersey, where I grew up, was a quintessential small town. So small we didn't have a high school, so I had to go to the neighboring town, Hackensack, to go to high school. So I went to Hackensack High, and it was a lot of playing sports in the park after school, and the fire department would blow the whistle at 6:00, and that was a signal for all the kids to go home and eat. And that was it was a nice way to grow up.
What was New York like when you were getting started, perhaps even comparing it to today, whether it's commercial real estate or just the people in general, the essence of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, New York has changed very, very dramatically over the years. When I started in 1984, and south of 96th Street was a very eclectic mix of neighborhoods. There were some neighborhoods that were clearly strong, others that were a little dangerous, and others like today in Manhattan, the Tribeca neighborhood has some of the highest home prices in the city and is one of the most prestigious neighborhoods to live in. Back in the 80s, if you were in Tribeca after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you were probably doing something illegal. The world has changed very, very significantly. And, we've gone through different changes over the decades. Now, Manhattan, south of 96th Street, is pretty homogenous. Every single neighborhood is a great neighborhood. And now what we've been seeing probably for the past 15 years or so is almost the Manhattanization of Brooklyn, where 15 years ago, Brooklyn had a lot of very diverse neighborhoods, some good, some not so good. Today, just about every neighborhood in Brooklyn is really, really good. And we're seeing the same type of thing happening in Queens as well. So lots of positive change in New York over the last 40 years.
Now, obviously you've been at various brokerage firms. You've started your own, and of course now, I mean, previously, of course, you were at JLL at one point, Cushman Wakefield. Was there ever a point where you were thinking about just segueing out completely, whether that's on the full-time principal side or perhaps another facet of the industry, or
ever getting out of the job, out of being a broker? No,
just over the years? No, there's never.
Yeah, no, I had a little bit of introspection after we sold Massey Knakal. I had my own firm, Massey Knakal, for 26 years and 46 days before we sold it. We grew that firm from what was just Paul Massey and I and a secretary to 250 people. The CoStar started tracking the New York City sales market in 2001. And from 2001 to 2014, when we sold the company, the number two firm had done about 1,300 sales. We had done over 4,000. So we had lapped the field by more than 3 times, which was a nice accomplishment for us. And we were very, very lucky. Sold the company right at the right time. 2014 was a record year for New York City in terms of sales. There were 5,534 buildings sold in 2014, which was an all-time record at the time by more than 10%, and that record still stands. So absolutely the perfect time to sell. We sold for $100 million, which was a life-changing thing for me. And I was on a contract we sold to Cushman & Wakefield. I was on a contract there, but started to think, okay, what do I really want to do? What do I want to achieve in my life? And never really thought seriously about doing anything but continuing to be a broker. I still really, really love what I do. Love getting up every day and getting into the office and selling buildings. And, again, feel very, very lucky that I found something that I love so much.
And on your journey over the years, Bob, could you share perhaps, I mean, everyone, of course, wants to have someone dispense, advice and so on and so forth, but perhaps maybe there are certain lesser known things that you may have done or observed that others have done that would come as a surprise to people as it relates to your journey and et cetera.
Well, the journey was full of challenges, as everyone's is. We started the firm in November of '88. The stock market had crashed in October of '87. '88 was still a good year, but the kind of wheels came off the bus in '89, and the S&L crisis kicked in. We almost went bankrupt a couple of times during that period of time. We're fortunate enough to make it through. By 1998. The market was doing really well. Then we got to the early 2000s, and there was a recession going on in the country at the time. We had 9/11 occur here in New York, and right after 9/11, a number of companies were downsizing, laying people off. They're great quality people that were out of work, and up till that time, Massey Knakal had grown from the two of us to about 21 people. Up to that point, Paul and I were interviewing everyone ourselves. And we said, you know what? New York is tough. It's going to bounce back. So counterintuitively, as everyone else was downsizing, we went out, hired a director of HR, said, look at all these high quality people that are out there. Let's go hire them all. And 2 years later, we had 150 people. So we were positioned very, very well. for the bounce back in the market, which really happened in 2003. And by 2004, it was really humming, and other companies started to hire people again. We already had a tremendous number of boots on the ground. By then, we had opened our Queens office, opened our Brooklyn office, had our Bronx operation in full swing. So we were ready to take advantage of it. And I remember those years, '04, '05, '06, '07. I mean, those are some great, great times. And then of course we went into the great financial crisis, which was challenging. We had to fire 25% of our staff. That was not easy, and very, very challenging. And one of the reasons why initially, after my time at Cushman and Wakefield was up, I didn't want to start my own business again. Very, very tough when people are depending on you and you have to let them go. But this time around, after my time at JLL, I decided it was time to do my own thing again, but running the business very, very differently than we ran Massey Knakal. I don't want to get to 250 employees again. I think, with technology the way it is today, we probably can do with 15 or 20 people what used to take a lot more than that to do in the past. So very excited about the new firm and what we're doing over here. And, again, just really happy to be in this business.
Now, you mentioned technology, and obviously there's been a lot of disruptions and a lot of change going on, particularly, of course, with artificial intelligence. Could you share perhaps your thought process on that the future of it and how it's going to impact the industry, or perhaps how you're leveraging it in some ways?
Sure. Well, I'm happy to address both. I think that technology has changed the world very dramatically already. I'll take you back to '84, sitting at my desk, no computer, no fax machine, no cell phone. And we used to carry rolls of quarters around so we can go down to the corner and make calls from the payphone when we were out in the field. And, today the world is so different, but I think the extent to which the world is going to change over the next 5 years is going to blow the change over the last 40 years away. The rate of change is so rapid that new technologies that you think are so great, that are only 2 months old, are being replaced with something bigger, faster, better, broader. And that's happening all the time with all kinds of things. So it's really very, very rapidly changing. And while I don't think AI is going to replace anybody, I believe someone using AI will replace someone who's not. And so very much in the spirit of Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan's book, Who Not How, the thesis of that book is, when you say to yourself, boy, that's a good idea, how am I going to do that? You're asking yourself the wrong question. It's, gee, that's a great idea. Who am I going to get to do that for me? I hired Seth Samowitz, my COO, who is an AI guru. He started AI companies. He worked in driverless cars. And, he's helping with the formulation, derivation, and implementation of all of our technology and AI initiatives.
Yeah, now, granted, I'm a young professional, if you will, and it's always interesting reading about what life was like for people going back, decades ago, and the change. And I surmise, to your point, Bob, that the next handful of years could be going from medieval Europe to the 20th century. And all the uncertainty.
Christian, if you think about how the world has changed, I mean, it's crazy. We're in the summer, hot day outside. If you think about it, it really wasn't too long ago that people didn't have air conditioning. Could you imagine what it was like to work in an office when it's 100 degrees outside and it's 95 degrees inside? I don't know how people did that. And it wasn't too long ago when I started working in '84, there was the corner of the office. There were 4 guys that smoked cigarettes at their desk all day. That's the way it was. Things change. And I really think that technology is a huge, huge game changer and it's going to change the way we live, the way we work. Certainly, it will have profound changes within the real estate industry.
Absolutely. And, to piggyback on the change and such going on, it's amazing. And whether it's technology or even our society, I know I'm kind of deviating here from our commercial real estate stuff, but, obviously I wasn't around in the 60s, but in some respects, it seems a lot of the change that's going on, whether it's socially or politically or this or that and the other, how it's kind of maybe reminiscent of the 60 previous eras of change and uncertainty. I don't know if you have any comments or such on that.
Yeah, no, I know. I was born in '62. I don't really remember the '60s that well. I think one of my earliest memories is running home from kindergarten in 1969 to watch the Mets and the Orioles in the World Series. My grandfather was a big baseball fan. We ran home to watch the games with him. And, back in those days, they played the World Series in the afternoon. It wasn't that big of a TV event. So they were afternoon games. But yeah, certainly things are very, very different today than they've been in the past.
And as far as your day-to-day, running your firm, BK Real Estate Advisors, could you share kind of what a typical day looks like for you, for the audience?
Oh, sure. But there is no typical day. The only thing that's typical about my day is I'm up very early, go to the gym, get a workout in, and then get started with the day. And, every day is different. I try to make sure that every week I'm allocating at least 10 to 12 hours for prospecting calls. That it to me for a broker is the gasoline that drives the car. And it's remarkable to me how many brokers don't have a formal prospecting plan. So, I think that's very important. But I'm basically out looking at properties, helping the guys with the implementation of their business plans and talking to people all day, trying to get deals done.
Now, could you share perhaps, what that was like when you were first starting off cold calling? Of course, I've done that at one point. I was a multifamily broker at Cushman at one point. To today, obviously, having a bit of name recognition, yourself. How has that been? I mean, do you still encounter resistance? I mean, could you share that dichotomy of, maybe?
Sure. Everybody experiences resistance. And one thing I say that as a cold caller, you need to know what your probability of success is. And, I know that in Manhattan, south of 96th Street, there's 27,649 buildings. The average turnover of that stock has been about 2.6%. About half the stuff that goes on the market sells. So only about 5% of the total stock is on the market at any one time. That tells you a couple of things. One, tells you that there's really not a big supply of properties for sale at any one time. And it also tells you that, when someone buys a property in Manhattan, on average, they own it for 40 years before they sell it. So, the probability of success is if you're calling 20 owners, only one is going to say that they want to sell. So you have to kind of go into it with the right mindset. And yeah, clearly at the beginning, when I first started cold calling, it was a lot tougher. Didn't know people, had to try to establish relationships. We always called to offer them something of value. We were always studying the market, doing market reports, analyzing all the comparables, doing the things that we would be able to share with a client and give them something that they would find value in. And so we always did that and tried to get meetings with people, tried to get to meet with them and get them to know us a little bit better. And over the years, as you have more and more years of experience, it gets easier and easier because the cold calls really aren't cold anymore. They're really more prospecting calls, as we call them, because I know and I've actually met most of the people that I'm calling these days. But I still occasionally call people who I don't know or don't know me. And it's still fun. It's fun trying to get those conversions from folks that don't know you to people who want to work with you.
Absolutely. I remember taking Rod Santamassimo's, and shout out to Rod for, the work that he's done, and, dispense to, new brokers and people trying to learn and cut their teeth in the industry. If you could share perhaps one or two deals that you brokered that were perhaps very challenging or noteworthy or perhaps really exciting for the audience.
Yeah, well, every deal I think has its own unique dynamics that make them interesting. Very rarely is there a deal that's very, very straightforward. I will tell you that I worked on a transaction in the Diamond District, where it was a non-jewelry building in the middle of a block that had almost all jewelry tenants. And there were a couple of different people on the block that in those days we were faxing offers over to the owner, was paying employees in the bookshop that this guy had to read the faxes and tell them what the bids were. And so we ended up going to a sealed bid format because we just didn't, couldn't allow that information to be made public. Using that kind of approach got us another 40% on the price, as people were not aware of what was going on. But, every deal, I can think of so many that were interesting for a variety of reasons. And, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but I can tell you mentioned an address of a building I sold in 1987. I can probably give you some great details about it.
Yeah, I've got a friend. She was in New York. I don't know if you know the name, but Daniel Sprawls by chance. But she was doing title out there, and she was mentioning about her being involved in the Chrysler building out there. And it was interesting hearing her take on what life was like, in the city going back, a decade plus ago. And so, you were mentioning that Diamond property there.
Yeah, yeah. So that was an interesting one. Always twists and turns. And then you'll have the occasional client that isn't fully transparent with you about things about the property, and you find out later on and have to deal with them. There's always something. There are no deals really that are very, very straightforward. And I've come to learn over the years the things that you absolutely have to have, so you minimize the probability that you're going to be surprised. Nothing fully eliminates the possibility that you're going to be surprised by something, but you want to try to reduce those risks to the extent you can. So I sell a lot of land. So the New York City zoning code is very complicated, and it tells you what kind of building you can have, how big the building can be, the shape the building can have. And the zoning experts will put together what's called a massing study that shows you the shape the building can have, and what you can and can't do on a particular site. Unfortunately, New York is an as of right jurisdiction, so zoning tells you a lot. Essentially every parcel is entitled, but you need to know the intricacies of setbacks and heights and curtain wall requirements and things like that. So you always want to get a massing study done before you start to work on a development site property.
Hey, can you share your current thoughts on the perhaps obviously no one has a crystal ball, but your thoughts on the economic landscape in the future, especially dealing with New York, given how multifaceted it is, to your point of trying to consummate a deal?
Well, I think the interesting thing, Christian, is that I've never seen such a close correlation between public policy and the way the real estate markets are working, and this is most acute in the multifamily sector. We have a system of rent regulation, which basically is price fixing, that's been around since 1974. And it has devastated the market. It's created a complete misallocation of the resource. You have families of 5 living in a 1-bedroom apartment. You have proverbial little old lady living by herself in a 4-bedroom apartment. misallocation of housing resources, an undersupply. It's what makes New York so expensive to live in. And our policymakers don't seem to get that. I think all of the housing problems in New York and probably elsewhere get solved with more supply. But yet, even though every one of our policymakers says they want New York to be more affordable for everybody, every piece of legislation that's either been implemented or ignored since 2018 has done nothing but constricted supply and exerted upward pressure on rents, making New York less affordable for everybody. So I always tell people, if you're a tenant in New York and you pay too much, it's because of your local politician, not because of your landlord.
I presume that that's prompted you to get perhaps more involved as far as on the policymaking side in terms of the decision makers, or?
Well, I always try, whenever I get the ear of a politician, I always try to talk to them, have them understand, how different policy is impacting the market. How, there were very, very draconian changes to our rent laws in June of 2019, which forced probably 85 to 90% of the old-time New York multifamily investors, and you being a multifamily guy, you can appreciate this. For decades, these people would only buy New York City apartment buildings. You forget it. You had something in New Jersey or Long Island or Westchester, they have no interest, only within New York City. And today, probably the vast majority of those folks will not even touch an apartment building here because of the politics. So we have a lot of new buyers coming into the market, folks from around the country, because while cap rates around the country have gone down, our cap rates really haven't. And my entire career up until 2019, New York City cap rates on multifamily were always 150 to 200 basis points below the rest of the country. That actually inverted in 2020, and still today. From what I understand, our cap rates are higher than other cities around the country, which is just remarkable to me. But that's what poor policy does.
And as far as your journey over the years, Bob, and what you're currently doing, are there things you are doing outside of work that you feel have been instrumental or creative to your personal development or success in brokerage?
Yeah, well, I mean, my life is very simple, Christian. I work, spend time with my wife and daughter, get to the gym, go to church, and that's pretty much it. Things I like to do when I'm not doing real estate. My wife and I support a number of charities that look to further the educational opportunities and general opportunities for disadvantaged children here in New York. I think that many of us are very fortunate to have been born to the parents we were born to be born in the United States. We don't choose who we're born to, and some folks just have a tougher time and don't have the opportunities that others do. So, I spent a lot of time trying to help folks get a little bit of a hand up and take advantage of the opportunities that our society does present.
Hey, I love the point that you brought up. I had another real estate professional, although he's in the residential space, and he mentioned about a lot of the ungratefulness out there, or people not even aware of how fortunate they are, and how even if someone is in the lower income bracket, how they're far better in many respects doing than many other people around the world, and how fortunate we are. And I feel like it's so easy, or at least I find with myself, it's so easy to get, you get involved in the minutia each day, that I feel like, much like working out or eating right, how that has to be maintained, the same as the perspective with, okay, this is what's going right, this is good, because it's fascinating. Even people who do extremely well, the whether they're depressed or they've got some mental health thing going on. And I think it's just a shame.
Yep, we have we'll have a lot to be thankful for. So I think you have to maintain a positive attitude. Try to appreciate. We all get so wrapped up in the day to day activities of our lives that sometimes we lose sight of things. We get very upset about things that, in retrospect, are really not worth getting upset about. But that's human nature. We all are guilty of that. But I think it's important to be grateful and to understand the opportunities that you have and try in some way to help someone who's not as fortunate as you are.
Absolutely. And as far as perhaps some idiosyncrasies or qualities or interests that you have that might come as a surprise to people, is there one or two in particular that you have or you would care to share?
Yeah, well, I love to cook. I love to grill. I do that a lot in the summer at my country house in the woods in Connecticut. Love to cook. Also, I collect sports memorabilia. I have a collection of Mark Messier game-used hockey jerseys, which, being a New Yorker and a lifelong diehard Ranger fan, Messier is very close in everybody's heart, given he delivered a cup here. So, those are some things that are fun hobbies of mine.
Now, I imagine you're growing produce, or do you have any livestock at your country place, or do you
No,
cooking, or
livestock. And I grew tomatoes and zucchini and peppers for a couple of summers, and just haven't had the time to do that for the last couple of summers. But definitely enjoy spending some time in front of the grill.
and as it relates to books, information, podcasts, could you share how you're getting your information? Whether, I mean, clearly, obviously, you're a subject matter expert in your niche, but as far as economic things are concerned, or just things that are accretive to what you do, could you share perhaps some sources where you get your
Sure.
information?
Well, I think reading is really important. Steve Siegel, who's the global chairman of Brokerage at CBRE, is one of my mentors, and Steve always told me, "Hey, read as much as you can. It'll serve you well." And so I love to read about human behavior, psychology, persuasion, selling. I actually have a suggested reading list on my website. I have two websites, bkrea.com and bobknakal.com. They're very interrelated. And if you go to bobknakal.com, under the About section, you'll find my suggested reading list, which has some great stuff. I mentioned Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan's book. They have a number of books that are great. And, so many things that I think you can get a lot out of. So I think self-improvement is important no matter what. You can always do better. And so I think, reading some of the books that I've read have been extraordinarily helpful for me over the years.
And as far as I inquired about particular deals or such that you worked on that may have been challenged, but could you share maybe a personal challenge or something that you encountered over the years and you overcame, and perhaps lessons or advice that you could share?
Well, there have been several, and I say the real lesson is don't let fear stop you from doing things. That fear is actually an opportunity to grow. And I often find when someone is afraid of something and they end up doing it and they make it through to the other side, that's really a personal growth thing. And I'll tell you, today I speak publicly quite often. I'm flying around the country to speak now. And, when I first started public speaking, I was scared to death. They say that people are more afraid of speaking in public than of dying. So as Jerry Seinfeld likes to joke, that means, at a funeral, people rather be in the coffin than eulogizing the person in the coffin. I was back in the early 90s I was the program chairman for the National Realty Club, and we had monthly luncheons. And that program chairmanship was the predecessor position to being president of the organization. But I had to procure a speaker for every lunch and then get up and introduce that speaker. And I remember the first time I had to do it, these luncheons had 150, 200 people back in those days, and got up to introduce the speaker. I was so nervous. I had a suit on with a light blue shirt, and got back to the office, took my jacket off, and I had these giant dark sweat stains under my arms, and I was so embarrassed. But then I went back the next month and was nervous again, but did it. And, month after month, and after 2 years of doing that, by the end, I was very comfortable. And so I think you do things and you try to face the fears that you have, and overcome your weaknesses. Another weakness I have is technology. We're doing some really super interesting things with technology today, but I was always very, very slow to pick up changes in technology. Every time we got a new phone system in the office, it took me a week to figure it out. I was on a BlackBerry years longer than I should have been. I was on a flip phone years longer than I should have been. But today with AI, I feel you really have to get in front of it, or it'll steamroll you. I think I jumped on that bandwagon relatively quickly. So far, it's worked pretty significantly to our advantage.
And could you share what advice you might dispense to your younger self, for perhaps younger members of the audience getting started?
Yeah, no, well, I think for younger folks in the business, I will share with you, because I've seen a lot of folks come and go in our business. A lot of brokers, hired a lot of brokers, so a lot of brokers succeed and a lot of brokers fail. I will tell you that the folks who do absolutely the best in our business are people who all possess three qualities. One, they are a true market expert at something. They pick a niche that's small enough that they can know everything about it, but large enough that they can make a good living doing it. Secondly, tremendous passion for the business. Passion is so important because no matter how good you are, you're going to have tough times. The market always has been, is, and always will be cyclical through no fault of our own. The market's going to slow down. And it's the people who truly love it in their heart that will fight through the tough times to make it to the good times, which will inevitably follow. And then the third characteristic is the ability to use discipline well. And I say use discipline as opposed to have discipline. Discipline is not something you have or don't have. It's something you choose to use or choose not to use. And I always quote Abe Lincoln, who said that discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And I think if you have clear goals and objectives and you're very cognizant of what you want most, it's a little easier to have discipline, or use discipline well. So those are the three characteristics. I say become a market expert, pick a niche of the market that you really can be an expert in, and become the go-to person in your market for that particular type of transaction. I hope you love the business. That will serve you well, but understand what discipline is and the fact that everybody has it, and it's just how you choose to use it that really makes the difference.
Absolutely. And Bob, what are you most proud of so far in life?
Well, I think I've been a pretty good person. I think if you talk to people generally in the New York City real estate market, I think it's not too many people will say negative things about me, which I always tried to treat people well and that kind of thing. And the thing I'm most proud of, I would say, is the fact that Paul Massey and I ran our business with a true servant leadership mentality and approach. We wanted everybody to succeed more than we did. Because of that, today in the New York City investment sales world, there are 30 companies or divisions of companies that are either owned by or run by people that we taught the business to. So we greatly enhanced people's lives, taught them a skill, helped develop their passion for the business. And today some of the top folks in New York City, investment sales, commercial real estate, are folks that were born in our system.
And is there any other information, advice, or a message that you would like to dispense to the audience? Something you're passionate
Look,
about?
I love to share information, share lessons learned. Again, go to bobknakal.com. In the About section, are a summary of my Knakal nuggets, we call them, nuggets with a K. But all lessons that I've learned over the years in this business, all of them pertain to investment sales, real estate. A lot of them pertain to any sales business. So if you're a salesperson, but you're not in real estate, I think you still could get a lot out of it. And interestingly enough, the overwhelming majority of them are life lessons as well. So, anybody want to go to bobknakal.com, you can go to the Knakal Nuggets. And, I think if you found some of the things that I've said today interesting, I think you'll find a lot more of them there.
And you nailed my my next question, which was how people can best get in touch with you. So I presume that's the website. Is there another?
Yeah,
Platform?
website. You can email me, bk@bkrea.com, or DM me. I'm very active on social media since January of 2023. So I'm on all the major platforms. Feel free to DM me or email me, and always happy to answer questions and chat with you.
Bob, thanks so much for being on the show today, and looking forward to having you on at some point down the road, and having you share your thoughts on the current landscape and perhaps new things that you're working on.
Great, Christian. It was great to be with you today. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, consider liking, subscribing, and following Discourse with Christian on social media. And I look forward to hearing your feedback. Thanks.